Hey guys, here's just a quick tip on using soft light mode and gradient map to get an interesting effect on your image. There's different overlay modes for all the layers. So if I come over and I make a new blank layer, by pressing the little plus symbol here, I have a new blank layer called Layer 1 on my layer palette. If I change the overlay mode to soft light, that then blends what's on the top layer to what's on the bottom layer. Each of the blending modes has a mathematical formula of what it does. And sometimes you can look that up and read all about it. Sometimes it's confusing. Sometimes you just play with it and you kind of figure out how it works. The theory with soft light blending mode is anything that is an exact medium gray tone will simply pass right through and do nothing to your image. So if I take a medium gray tone in soft light mode and I paint gray paint and completely fill the top layer with gray paint and I turn the eyeball on and off, you see absolutely no effect because soft light mode passes medium gray through with no change. If you have something on a layer and it is brighter than a mid-tone, in soft light mode, if I paint a stripe down my image, anything brighter than a mid-tone will become brighter. Any color that I've picked that's lighter than a mid-tone will make what's underneath brighter. And if I pick a color that's darker than a mid-tone and paint on the screen, it'll make everything darker. Alright, now that works not just only with medium gray, but it also works with color. So if I pick a light blue color and I paint in soft light mode, it's adding blue and lightening. So when I put a lot of blue on top of my image and turn the eyeball on and off, because it's a blue tone that is lighter than a mid-tone, I get two effects combined into one. My image gets lighter, but my colors pick up some blue. If I use a blue tone that is darker than a mid-tone and I paint, I get some blue added to everything underneath, and because I'm using a color that's darker than a mid-tone, everything gets darker with the bluish cast. So why that's important is a couple things. If I'm like sort of dodging and burning, I can use soft light mode with a gray tone to dodge and burn. But I can also add color to my tone, brighter or darker, and in addition to getting like a dodging and burning effect, I get a color toning effect. So if I close this file and I pick up an image that this is one Kel took at the seminar, if I add a new blank layer and I want to simply kind of dodge and burn, if I want to go darker, I pick a color of gray that is darker than a mid-tone. I change the overlay mode to soft light, and now when I paint, it's making everything darker. And of course, the darker shade of gray that I pick, the darker the impact on the image, because I'm doing it on a layer. I can fade that in and out. If I pick a color that is lighter than a mid-tone in soft light mode and paint it on, my image becomes brighter. So you can work your way around the image and slightly change the brightness depending on whether you're using a bright or dark shade of gray. But a minute ago, we added some light blue to our color patch. So now when I paint, I'm getting the double effect. It's not only lightening my image, but it's adding a blue tone. And if I use a dark shade of blue that's lower than a mid-tone, I will get some blue effect and a darkening effect. So you can use a new blank layer in soft light mode, and if you use a dark color, it'll get darker. If you use a dark colored tone, it'll get darker and take on that color tone. And if you use a light shade, it'll become lighter. And if you use a light shade with some color to it, it'll add that color. Like sometimes we want to add some warmth. So if I want to add some warmth and I want to brighten my image a little, I can pick up here on the color picker, and when I paint, oop, got to do it on a layer. Make my new blank layer, change it to soft light, paint. So I'm both warming the image up and I'm making it a little bit brighter. If you only want the color effect, pick a midtone that's that color, like this one here, this brownish color. And so the brightness doesn't come in, mostly the color effect. Okay, well, you should know, or you will learn, if I double up an image, so I have two copies of the image, one on top of the other, and I go to Image Adjustment, Gradient Map, I can create a gradient. So, if it's simple black and white, it's black on the dark end, it's white on the other end, and I use that to turn my top image black and white. If I change it to soft light mode, the brights get brighter, the darks get darker, the midtones stay the same. I can fade the opacity in and out. So I can use that to get a contrast adjustment to my image. But because soft light mode also will apply some color, we can go to Image Adjustment, Gradient Map, and make a gradient where our dark color has a color to it. So I'm going to put some dark blues in the shadows. I'm going to put a warm tone in the highlights, and I don't want my midtones affected, so I'm going to add an additional spot, and I'm going to make that medium gray. And what that means is my shadows have taken on some blue, my highlights have taken on some orange, and I told it to leave my midtones alone because I set the midtones as a medium gray color. We changed that to soft light. I have blue in the shadows, warm in the highlights, midtones left alone, and again, because it's on a layer, I can fade that in and out. So you can use it as a color grading effect. And of course, you can use the inverse of that if you want to add a tone to your midtones. So if I come up to Image Adjustment, Gradient Map, select the gradient and use, we're going to make the shadows medium gray. We're going to make the highlights medium gray. So now I come to the midtones, and let's say I want to slightly skew them in a warmish direction. I pick an orange midtone. That's going to create a gradient map where my shadows are medium gray, my highlights are medium gray, and it only added the orange tone to my midtones. So now when I change that to soft light mode, my shadows didn't get any darker, my highlights didn't get any brighter, and it targeted the warmth in the midtones. I can then, of course, fade that in and out to get the effect I want, if it's a little too severe. But wait, there's not more. I can go into Image Adjustment Curves, and I can push that orange midtone up, and I can pull that orange midtone down and help adjust where it's targeting. So don't be afraid to try using a soft light layer. And of course you can spot it in as well. So if I like the light on her and I just want to add some color to the shadows behind her, maybe a bluish tone, I'm going to pick blue. I'm wanting to target shadows, so it has to be darker than a midtone. And I want to add color, so I'm picking this blue color. If I paint that in soft light mode, whoopsie, soft light mode back behind her, then mask it or erase it off her, I'm going to use the smudge tool trick to smudge that right in where I want it. If I don't have a halo, I'm not going to spend all of my time. You get the idea. So I've added bluish purple to my background without doing anything to the subject herself. And again, once I have a color on a layer, if I go to the color wheel, Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, I can rotate the color that's on that layer all around the color wheel till I find something that I think is complementary to what she's wearing or her skin tone. And I can boost the saturation or pull some saturation. And I can adjust the lightness of the background. It's kind of long, took me a minute, but don't be afraid to try it.